The last thing they remembered was the light, and then silence. When their eyes opened, the island was gone. Or maybe they were gone, because the ocean around them wasn't the same anymore. It stretched on forever, a seamless mirror of the sky, with no horizon to separate them. Their ship, once a sturdy vessel of exploration, now drifted aimlessly in a strange, glowing mist that clung to the water like a shroud. On the deck, the compass spun wildly, a frantic dance of metal and glass, its needle betraying its very purpose. The crew, a collection of seasoned sailors and brilliant minds, now looked like lost children. Their faces, pale and drawn, were masks of confusion and a creeping, primal terror. One of them, a young navigator with eyes wide with disbelief, leaned against the railing, his knuckles white. He whispered to the empty air, the words catching in his throat, a chilling realization that defied all logic. We never left the island. The sound, barely a breath, seemed to echo across the unnatural stillness, amplified by the mist, as if the ocean itself was listening. They heard chanting faint voices calling their names, carried on a wind that didn't stir the sails. It was a melody of ghosts, a siren's song woven from memory and sorrow. Compelled by a force they couldn't understand, they moved toward the edge of the ship, drawn to the ethereal sound. And when they followed the sound, they saw themselves, their own shadows walking on the water. These were not mere reflections. They were ghostly apparitions, silhouettes of who they were, yet profoundly different. The reflections moved with a haunting slowness, their forms distorted and warped by the glowing water beneath them. As the crew stared, transfixed in horror, visions flooded their minds, quick flashes of a time long past, tinted in the sepia tones of ancient history. They saw villagers, their ancestors perhaps, toiling under a sun that had set centuries ago, building the very island they had just left. They were laying stones, carving symbols, and chanting prayers. And then, the most terrifying revelation of all the same intricate symbols from the ancient stones began to appear on their own hands, glowing with a soft, phantom light. A whisper, cold and clear, slithered into their minds, a voice that was both ancient and intimately familiar. You were here before. From beneath the ocean, something rose. The water began to churn, bubbling violently as if a great furnace had been lit in the abyss. Then, with a groan that shook the very timbers of their ship, a figure carved from stone and time broke the surface. It was immense, a titan of forgotten ages, its body covered in the same glowing runes they now bore on their skin. This was the guardian of the forgotten. Its eyes, dormant for millennia, opened like two nascent suns, their intense light burning through the thick mist and casting the crew in a harsh, interrogating glare. The sheer scale of the being was overwhelming, the ship rocking violently in its wake. As the guardian raised one colossal hand, a gesture of immense power, the world around them froze once more. The waves, the mist, even the air itself, became still as glass. A deep, guttural roar echoed from its stone throat, a sound that wasn't just heard, but felt deep in their bones. On the deck, frozen in time and terror, one of the crew managed to choke out the question that hung in the air. What does it want? Another, a historian who had dedicated her life to ancient myths, answered with a dreadful certainty, her voice barely a whisper. Not us. Our memories. The guardian spoke not in words, but in thoughts, its voice a telepathic wave that washed over their minds, drowning out their own consciousness. It offered a choice, a terrible bargain. They could leave this place, return to their world, and sail away from the island forever. But the price was forgetting. Forgetting the island, the guardian, the whispers, and the truth that now pulsed in their veins. They would go back to their lives, whole in body but with a gaping hole in their souls they would never understand. Or they could stay and remember the truth of what they were. As the choice hung heavy in the air, a glowing energy enveloped the crew. Visions, sharper and more vivid than before, assaulted them. A montage of their past lives flickered before their eyes. They were ancient explorers, cartographers of a world yet unknown, the original settlers of that mystical island. They were the very people from the sepia-toned flashbacks. One of them, The navigator, who had first voiced their impossible reality, stepped forward. His fear was gone, replaced by a profound sense of purpose. He looked up at the stone titan, his voice clear and steady, a whisper that carried the weight of ages. "We built this place. We are its keepers." In that moment of acceptance, a blinding light engulfed everything, swallowing the ship, the crew, and the guardian in its pure, white embrace. When the storm cleared, a ship drifted near the coast. Empty, its sails were tattered, its deck weathered by a journey that left no mark in any logbook. There was no crew, no signal of life, just the gentle creak of wood and rope as it bobbed on the placid waves. But if you stand on that shore, and you listen closely to the waves as they kiss the sand, you'll hear them, faint whispers carried on the sea breeze, voices still calling from the island that time forgot. And if you look out to the endless blue, you might just see a glint of light on the water's surface, a single floating pendant, glowing faintly. A final, silent testament to the keepers who chose to remember. The story isn't over. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you were captivated by this mystery, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. You won't want to miss what comes next.